Welcome to episode 5 of
Savage Discourse.
Savage Discourse. Savage Discourse. Savage Discourse. It's coming in through your ears.
Welcome.
Welcome. Here we are. It's John
And Kyle.
and Kyle. And we're here to talk at you. Well, I did this bit before.
You did.
Talk within you. Talk about you.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about you.
You know what you did.
You know who you are. You know where they are. You know where the evidence lies. So it's episode 5 this week, and we are here to talk about another what we would consider a cerebral topic. The episode is the perceptions that we have of human experience. I originally titled this "The Multitudinous of Human Perception," but Kyle said that was a little bit too throny.
A little
bit too pretentious. So yeah, we're going to talk about human perception of reality and the duality, the multitudinous, the mosaic.
There it is.
There,
You couldn't stop.
you
couldn't stop.
You just
yourself.
watched me plant one foot on each stair of the throne.
Starting your step down and then just plopped right back into it.
So yeah, welcome. Last week we talked about cutting anchors, and as it refers to toxic people and toxicity in general in the workplace and personal relationships, and even in romantic relationships, it permeates, doesn't it, Kyle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I could have talked about that, but I let Kyle talk about the romantic nature of toxicity. He had some great life experiences. So, tune in, check that episode out if you're interested in our take on toxicity and maybe some more of the behavioral and psychological aspects of it.
The System of a Down again. It's just
The toxicity of our city.
You just don't hear that word in everyday use, you know?
Toxic. Yeah, it really, it's one of those kind of buzzwords in our kind of cultural realm, but yeah, we don't really oh man, I had a toxic Subway sandwich from Subway.
It's the same thing whenever I hear Chop Suey.
Oh, that's a good song. You know what? Maybe our podcast can just be about System of a Down.
Okay.
We're just slowly becoming where we're going to start mentioning like Pogo and Bounce and like maybe some aerials, and then maybe, just work in a song reference each episode.
Yeah. Or we could just be a band. You want to just be a band?
All right, I'm cutting the feed off.
All right.
We're going to go buy some instruments.
I can play the electric triangle.
Oh. Okay, we need to have a first band discussion about the sound we're going to try to have.
Oh, what were you thinking?
I was thinking more like new age post-progressive ska metal with just a tinge of throat singing.
Oh. I was thinking more electric triangle.
Listen, this is a trade-off, but as long as I get my triangle.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want, but
I'm a one-instrument man. Great. Well, this is great.
Yeah.
I can't think of any way to work this into our main narrative that we're going to be talking about. So music is interesting because everyone has a different perception of the music that's produced. Like think of the Beatles, like how their songs have a uniform message, but how many different meanings and personal experiences that everyone has. Oh, I remember, so years ago, I was dating a gal, and she had a friend, and that relationship did not end well due to toxicity. Talk about a recursive reference. And I was over at her friend's house, and we were listening to the Beatles. No, sorry. We were listening. So their friend had a record player. Her friend was actually, I was in my early 20s. This girl I was dating was in her 30s, and we were at a friend who was in her 50s. So every decade was representative. Except for maybe there were some 40s up until like the 60s, and 60s were represented by the vinyl that we were listening to, and and we were listening to. Thank you for your participation in my dialogue, And they put a vinyl on, and obviously we were in a different headspace. And I was laying on the floor and just absorbing this music, and I just remember getting halfway through the vinyl record and just like sitting up and just like looking at the room and proclaiming like, who is this? This is an incredible whatever this sound is. I've never heard anything like this.
The Beatles.
Yeah, and the woman whose house we were at in her 50s, turned to me kind of a sly smile and was like, "That's the Beatles," and I was like, wow,
that's the Beatles.
Like, how many people have had that experience? Like, so many people have been like, "Who is this? It's incredible. It's so moving, and the sound, and it's like it's in me." And they're like, "Oh, well, that's the Beatles for you." And so taking extrapolating that kind of moment and pulling that experience, like music is a great way to look into the realm of human experience and the way that we all perceive things differently. Because like to me, death metal and metal are like they can be calming, they can be energizing, and different songs like make me, well, and I just want to say, and I've said this a lot, like metal and like hard rock and that genre of music that obviously borrows a lot from blues, which makes sense because that's where all music in America where it kind of grew from is blues and jazz specifically in terms of rock, as it was borrowed in the 50s and how Elvis and anyway popularized it. So but for me, like that kind of soulfulness, it makes me feel something that like no other music makes me feel. But a lot of people don't have that experience.
Yeah, that's how space rock is for me.
Space
love
rock.
Space
I did
rock.
not think space rock was going to make an appearance in this episode.
Well, here we are. If anybody wants to take a whirl, go to YouTube, Google 5 hours of relaxing psychedelic space rock.
It really is, and it's very moody and atmospheric, but it definitely has that kind of that progressive, the licks, the riffs are very.
Yeah, I don't know what it is that like no matter what mood I'm in, that like fits. I think it's because the first time I listened to it was special.
Yeah, it was special. It always is. The first time you hear anything that fundamentally that leaves a mark on you in such a positive way, like it's time stamped into your consciousness and your memory, your hippocampus. Like I feel like we just like it's really meaningful and special. So yeah, check out space rock. And for those of you who want something a little bit more in your face, check out death metal. If you want your music with a little bit more of a bite, try death metal. And so, I think that might be a good segue, into human experience and the different ways that. So I guess the way to kind of frame this is like, there are experiences, there are objects in reality, and there are just energy signatures that exist in the reality that we perceive with our sensorium. There are different senses, our sense of smell, hearing, space, everything, and touch, all the other ones. And you, just like have to keep plugging all the different senses. And
your sensorium.
That's what it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And look it up, Kyle.
All right.
As I can't see you up here on my throne.
Yeah, just toss me one of your books.
No, they keep my throne leveled. And so, there's really, when you think about things in terms of a deterministic, where everything follows a pattern and the universe is orderly, there are just things that happen, in the universe that happens in I don't know if Richard Dawkins says this or if he borrowed it from somebody else, but, we're medium-sized organisms experiencing medium-sized phenomenon. We're not microscopic organisms, in their own minutia and their own small world, but we're also not macroscopic organisms where we're huge and we perceive the galaxy and the universe and all. So there's ways to do that, but it's not typically available to the day-to-day human experience. So yeah, I think, we are experiencing all these things and they're really external to us. But then if you have, it's kind of like a focal point, like if you have 10 different lights on one source in the middle of a room, every single one of those lights from their perspective is going to cast the object into a different relief, into a different hue, into a different color, into, you'll see the different space, the negative space. And I think that's a really great, maybe overly done metaphor for human perception.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, cool. And so I want to talk about an experience that I had recently, and it was very jarring, and it kind of set the stage for me to talk to Kyle and say, hey, I kind of think I want to talk about this because it was really powerful to me.
Yeah, it's kind of where the episode was born.
Yeah, on this bridge in between two states. So, those of us who know where we are stationed out of, we're actually positioned in, I wouldn't say, I was going to say like rosy Louisville, Kentucky. I don't think that's the right word. There's a lot of bourbon, so it's more brown. It's more brownish.
Browny Louisville, Kentucky.
In turgid Louisville, Kentucky. Browny Louisville, Kentucky. There's a bridge that connects the Big Four bridge that connects Kentucky, Louisville's waterfront to the Indiana.
Ooh.
We don't want to alienate. Well, I don't know.
We can alienate that state.
We don't know what our demographics are yet. But we may feel one way or the other about Indiana because I'm from there. And anyway. So it connects over to the Jeffersonville, kind of the waterfront district, and there's all this stuff happening over there. So anyway, I, as a modern man who enjoys partaking the scenes of the city, but don't enjoy sweating profusely while I do, enjoy biking. Because I guess I could walk and run there, but it takes too long, and the amount of effort and the caloric expenditure would just be too high. Mm-hmm. So I like to bike. So I bike over there, and it's beautiful. There's a waterfront view. You go over, you climb up this giant, kind of like a a spiral kind of staircase, but it's like a flat ramp and plane. Yeah, a flat plane, and then you cross over. And I don't know exactly how long the bridge is. It feels like it could be like less than a mile, like half, 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, I think it's less than a mile.
Yeah. And then it does kind of the mirror opposite and ramps back down over in the kind of marketing, business, entertainment district over in Jeffersonville on the waterfront. So I've done this numerous times where I've gone up and I ride over and kind of ride around and may or not be playing a certain game.
I was about to say
involving small creatures you can steal from their environment and enclose them in small spheres.
Yeah, I think it's less about the scenery and more about Pokemon.
And you don't know me, Kyle.
You're right.
And so you're right. I'm one of your best friends. So I go up over there, and usually there's people busking, and busking is the time honored hit. Since time immemorial. Though I have a skill that's entertaining, and I want to produce that for the bypassers, and so there's people playing guitar or people that are doing maybe dancing to music or creating musical loops, and usually music is kind of the
thing. I didn't know busking referred to things other than music.
Yeah, when I traveled to Vancouver with that same person I was talking about I dated 10 years ago earlier at the beginning of the story. There you walk down the Vancouver streets and there's people doing break dancing and people writing reading poetry, people painting, doing art, doing caricatures. It's really awesome.
Cool.
I think it's beautiful, the creation, the people who are creating just put their they don't demand payment, but you can, and I just think that's really cool, and it kind of goes back, it's kind of that human desire to perform and to create. I think it's really neat. And so anyway, I was biking across, and there's always buskers, but this one day there was a particular man, and he was sitting on an amplifier. He was playing an electric guitar that was running an amplifier, had a mic around a kind of like a wire necklace that then put the microphone in his face. They're both running through like a light reverb or a delay sound effect that was really nice. And I later, after listening to him and listening to he was doing blues and soul covers of all these popular songs from decades. And I was listening to that, and it was just so serene. It was not a few clouds in the sky, the water. There was wind up there. It was in the middle of towards the end of the day, and it was just so beautiful. It really felt like a moment at a time. And he was just there adding this beautiful ambience, this beautiful music. And, obviously he had his stage performance, he had his stage kind of persona where he would talk to people and interact. And then in between, he would kind of come across to the side and talk about the real, the state of things in the world, especially on our embattled continent politically and racially and everything. And so he would talk about all that stuff. And, and then so through talking to him, and, obviously I play a little bit of guitar. So not obviously, he said, it seems like maybe you have an interest in this more than just audience. I was like, yeah, I play guitar as well. And he was like, oh, cool. And I was like, I've got it on my couch at home right now. And where is my guitar?
It's over there.
Oh, okay. I was like, it's usually on the couch. I just realized it was missing.
Remember I dropped it the other day?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
And so anyway, we're talking, and he told me that his stage name is Big Papa Stampley. And he is a middle-aged black man. I want to make sure I say that the right way, he was having a tie-dye shirt on, a nice little cap, some shorts on, and he was really, he had his mask on, and he was just there playing. And I came home later and I checked out his profile page, and this man has done all kinds of things. He's a Caribou jazz, which is Caribbean blues jazz. And he was actually born in Chicago, but he has he has 4 CDs under his belt. He was the winner of the 2016-2018 Kentuckiana Blues Challenge Solo Duo Award. Was nominated in 2014 and 17 for the Blues Artist of the Year awards. He was the winner of the 2014 Sylvester Weaver Award and the Fred Hampton Image Award in 2004. Sorry. And he's not only done that, he's done voiceovers for video clips on the internet, which we watched for Cadillac and Canadian Mist. Yeah, Kentucky Lottery, Canadian Mist, the highest shelf you need. You have to have a step stool to reach of bourbon, which is not the case. And he also, supported a lot of arts and everything else. He's also been included on live TV segments and been, has a different portfolio for his artistry. So anyway, this amazing man didn't mention any of that to me. He was just there, and he, the thing that he kept saying was he was just, he's like, I'm just out here making good music for the people, and I want people to be happy and to just feel the happiness, putting out that vibe. There's so much divisiveness, and everything's so divided, and he just wants to, he was out there playing. And after realizing all this, he's a performer by trade, and he probably hasn't been able to do that due to the C word. Mm-hmm. And so he was out there, and wearing his mask, taking care of himself and playing, and it was just so moving to me, and it was so neat. And so anyway, I was like, well, I listened to him about for 30 minutes, or got some audio on my phone, for my own personal use later, just to listen to and remind myself of that moment. And then I was like, well, I'll catch up with you, Stampley. I'm going to go, I don't think I told him what I was doing.
I'm going to go, there's a pretty badass Pikachu over here.
I don't know if you know anything about this, but there's these small invisible monsters that I'm going to capture and then trade and force them to battle each other.
I can't believe you're so calm right now. You should see what's right next to you.
Dude, you don't even know what's around you. So I went over there, played for a while, and then on the way back, I came and stopped on the other side of the bridge and, spoke to him on the way, listened to some more music, watched him interact with people. Just such a kind, gentle soul, and just such a great performer. Has an amazing voice. Go check him out. If you Google Big Papa Stampley on YouTube in Louisville, it'll pop up, and you can support him. Just an incredible artist, incredible human being. And anyway, from what I can tell, I don't know. After last episode,
that's quite an endorsement.
Yeah, after our toxic episode last time, I'm not always the best judge of character, but he, from first impressions, he left me with just enhanced my day in every way possible. So anyway, on the way back, I was listening to him, and in between songs, and whenever people went around, he would talk to me, pull his mic to the side, and he would just talk about politics and everything that's going on right now, and just we saw eye to eye on everything, and really just kind of clicked in the middle, and just had this incredible dialogue. And from different, he used to own businesses, and he just talked to me a little bit about his life, and didn't mention any of the amazing accolades and anything he had. Didn't find that out till later. So I was feeling pretty good. I was bike riding. The sun was going down. The air was great. The music was in the air. The people, just this energy and all these. It just really made me kind of feel that togetherness that we talk about in meditation, and just really feel the power of the moment. So, but
and then,
boy, you'll never guess what happened next. So, towards the end of when I was listening, I started hearing this other sound that was happening at the other. He was towards the middle of the bridge. I think he was more towards the Kentucky side, but I heard this sound that kind of sounded like someone was yelling in kind of a certain tone, and kind of, had this cadence to their voice. And so I was like, oh, well, okay, Stampley, I've been listening to you for an hour cumulatively. I think that, I'm going to head on, but I'm going to check you out. It's been amazing. Please keep creating. Please keep doing what you're doing. And he was like, you too, brother. You keep, blah, blah, blah. And we were like, this is, so it was like amazing. I felt charged. I felt energized, contacting this raw art form. And so I ride my bike over, and on the other end of the bridge are these Well, I'm just going to describe the scene. So there was majority of these individuals were white, and there were a few other persons of color and different races there, but the majority of them were white, and they were standing on the other. And the reason I'm only bringing that up is to provide the contrast that I'm going to talk about. And so they were there, and they were what I would consider evangelical kind of end time. The word for that is eschatology, the study of the end times. And there's a lot of different, they were there preaching that things are bad and they're not, and they were, had a loudspeaker, and they were just kind of, they weren't assaulting people. They weren't, but they weren't really blocking anybody, but they were also handing out pamphlets to people that would slow down to listen and kind of catch their eye. And, if you're interested in this, and their rhetoric was all fire and brimstone, and, hell is real. And if, things are bad, they're not going to get better, and that Jesus is the only way to get better. And, really just, and so, and it really felt like, I don't know how to describe it. It felt like I had this beautiful canvas of this painting that was done by all these different elements across my sensorium, all these different senses I had, and everything became this beautiful collage. And it just felt like they just dumped this vat of feces and excrement and this awful, all these awful things onto it. And so
they killed the vibe, man.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they killed the vibe. And so I and I just was struck by the rhetoric, and not just like, hey, if you're interested in this particular religion or our particular sectarian denomination of this, please check this out. It wasn't that. It wasn't a nice, gentle, it was things are bad. You will go to hell if you don't find this. This is the only way. Jesus is the only salvation. And so I, was very struck physically and mentally by that. So as I rode by them, I said some things I probably shouldn't have. And, of course, they react to that, because that's what in that moment, I was not being my best self or my most ecumenical, my most open-minded, understanding, living in the moment, as we talk about. I was very, I felt very tethered to that people. And as Papa Stampley had said earlier, as we were talking about, different things, when you associate and you let those kind of feelings and people affect you in that way, you're really allowing that part of yourself to become just like that, and you're associating with the worst parts of yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I did. I kind of became consumed by it, and I felt angry. My heart rate sped up, and I just felt really angry. So I said a few things I shouldn't have as I was biking, and of course they used that as incendiary gossip, as fire on their conflagration to raise and be like, well, this man's lost all faith. This man right here, that's why, brother, you've lost all faith in what you believe in, and blah, blah, blah. And so I just kept writing. And I will say that I pretty much immediately felt guilty for having said something, because, at the end of the day, if they truly believe the way that I think they do, they really think they're in the business of saving souls, and to them, that's the biggest good, the greatest good. Ultimately, it's a little, it's kind of caustic and short-sighted, and they're not really seeing the social ramifications of what they're saying. But to them, their reality is that's true. And so that's kind of the impetus. Another impetus is, I came from, and so in that moment, in that small amount of time, I was experiencing as an independent organism and an experiencer of these two very different realms of human experience of human experience. On the one side, you had this older gentleman who was there to create, and he was really passionate about creation and about so I had two very different experiences. This man who's creation, talking about creating as a process that, he just wants to give this feeling, but, put a happiness out into this world that right now is wounded and is staggering and is, just taking hit after hit. And then on the other side, you had these individuals who, bound by conviction and bound by their fear, I guess, or their, proselytizing mission, they were just putting out this very different message of fear, and I wouldn't say hate, but of fear, and that there's only one way and it's this way. It was the exact opposite. It felt like a destruction of the human spirit as it's relegated to a larger force that they believe exists, that is only there to condemn them for not adjoining to the cause. So that's why I wanted to talk about, the duality, the multitudinous, the mosaic of human perception.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, like you said, like they're not out there trying to ruin your time or anything. They're doing the best thing they think that they could possibly be doing. And you just identified more with Stampley when someone else could have walked up and saw what they were doing and was like, "Oh, that's really great," and then walk over and see Stampley. And I don't think you could really criticize Stampley for anything. He seems pretty cool.
No, he's a good man. I don't know if as a male, I'm supposed to call him Big Papa Stampley. I don't know if that's reserved for the ladies, but I was like, all right, Big Papa, I'll catch you later. So hopefully,
did he shoot you a look?
He was just like, okay, thank you. But no, he was super cool about it. But I mean, I don't know how, when people have those surnames, like,
was he a larger man or was he average?
I was looking at videos. He used to be a much bigger fella.
Oh, yeah.
He kind of lost a bunch of weight.
Okay. Well, I think that refers to his weight then, and I think that's just okay.
Okay. Not like his masculinity or his like, I'm the patriarch and you're not the demographic I want to call me that.
Yeah.
He does not like it when you call him Big Papa. Unlike, who is that?
Biggie Smalls.
Biggie Smalls,
I think. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I like it when you call me Big Papa.
Yeah.
Okay. We can look that up.
It's Biggie Smalls.
Okay. So that's what I want to talk about. Is it's so fascinating to me, and I know that every country, every geographic area has different tiles of this mosaic of human perception, but especially our country, which is a pluralistic nation with all these different approaches to thought and all these different, and we take them from other countries and we absorb them, and people from all over come in, and then we have this beautiful melting pot. It's fascinating to me just how much, I don't know, I guess to me it was that vitriol, it was that anger, it was that fear that really kind of put in relief the kind of opposite of that, which is the moment. And as we've, and I know, and I'm going to use this, and it's been said before, but I think it's beautiful. If art is how we decorate space, music is how we decorate time. And I really felt like he was decorating time with this positive message and this powerful imagery, and then playing all these songs that people would know and that they cared about, and that he did these amazing souls and bluesy covers of them. And on the other side, you just have this, and so on the left side you have this one, not left or right in terms of political, but on one hand you have just creation. You just have this ability, you have this, hey, everybody, I want, this is for you, and you could do this too if you wanted to, and it's amazing, and there's no limitations to this, and there's just happiness and love here. And on the other side, it's really this rigidity, this inflexibility, this ideological monotone that's, this is how it is, this is the only way. And, I know there's blends, and I know that there's like a gradient in there of people who feel both ways, but just on that day it was so just night and day, and just so one pole to the other, that kind of binary. To plug that, the binary of experiences. So yeah, what do you think about that? Have you ever had any kind of jarring experiences, or maybe in your own life, anything that kind of that's shown you the different ways that human beings perceive this external world or project their own beliefs onto the external world?
Every day you see it, honestly. That's kind of what makes, if everybody felt the same way about everything, life would be pretty boring,
Yeah, that's true. Boring is a good word for it. I think it would be it's kind of like if everyone was blobs,
Yeah.
But the cynicism in that is that if everyone was blob, and I think that like the Fairly Odd Parents did this episode, that kind of riffed on this, which is actually a really excellent existential commentary on a fairly heavy philosophical thought experiment. But like, if everyone was blobby, then everyone would be the same, everything. But then the cynicism and skepticism in there says, but then some people would be more blobby than other people. Well, we're grayer than you. We're even blobbier than you are. We're the ultimate blobbiness. You're just medium blobby. You've got some angles and some of this, but we've got the whole package.
Yeah. It's kind of just human nature, I guess.
I really think that it is. And I, again, think that a lot of the things we've talked about, kind of through the lens of meditation, through reading, through learning, and through becoming a more cosmopolitan, traveling, seeing new things, and doing, I think it really kind of helps ground you to the universality that, that is in all of us, but it doesn't have to control all of us, So yeah, I think that's really interesting. We tried to stay away from this as long as we could, but I really don't think there's any, especially now that we've set the table. So we've set the table just so eloquently, so intentionally. It'd be a shame not to eat the food there.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about religion.
I guess so.
All right.
Here we go.
Religion's dumb. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No. I mean, everyone has their opinions.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're not going to say one way's dumb or the other.
No.
I think
I want to approach this with the same poise and hopefully disentanglement, diffusion, and a respectful kind of, orbiting around it as we usually do.
Yeah.
Through the lens of our own experience, but understanding that it, that is just one experience.
Yeah. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, just like I said, I think it was the last episode, like it's really just how you were raised, like all of your experiences kind of led to who you are. So, I mean, to sit here and act like someone else is dumb because they think one way, they probably think I'm dumb because I think this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's amazing to say that because that you can recognize that and that anyone can recognize that because once you identify the pitfalls of the fact that we exist inside of our own the mansions of our own mind, when you see that everyone does that, it really shows you that nothing is really, subjectively, nothing is really better than anything else. We really are the product and the sum of all of the totality of our experiences, of course, life, our genetics, and then, of course, our upbringing, developmental history, and any potential fun little nuances that come with, having one of too many chemical or too little of too many chemical. And, it's, I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
So for me, I was raised by a Southern Baptist and a Catholic. And and so I was raised in that home. Now, they chose when they came to live. So my dad was from Texas. My mom was from Indiana. They came to rest in southern Indiana, and they decided that they wanted to take us to a much more open-minded, progressive church. So we went Presbyterian, which Presbyterian is kind of, they champion the social gospel, which is don't just say that you love and care people. Go out and do something. Like go build a ramp for people who need a ramp. Go work at a soup kitchen. So they were involved with a lot of social works of faith, like Repair a Fair and other local things that were, there was a need in the community, and we would go do it. We would go help them and build stuff. So, that was kind of but layered within that is still kind of the main Christian teachings of, Christ is real, he died for our sins, and, kind of the very, just the old shtick of the Abrahamic religions. It's still there. It's still embedded in there. But there's not really the fire and brimstone. It's more about, I was baptized, and, once you're baptized, you're born again and you're saved. And,
that's good.
Yeah, isn't that good? Isn't that nice?
Yeah, fire and brimstone's overrated.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I feel like that's the wrong reason to be joining a religion is
just
because you're afraid of the
recourse.
Consequences. And I feel like that's why a lot of people are so passionate about religion because they don't want to burn forever. Well,
yeah, a good chunk of them, I think there's fear, but then a good chunk, I think, when you dissect what a institution, what is at a local level, like at a local church institution, like what it provides, which is community, solidarity with people in your community. It provides, you're in a similar headspace. There's everyone, people there are there for the reason, you all believe the same. So there's that kind of social think and the kind of, and I don't want to say it like this, but I do feel like it's kind of true, kind of that comfort that comes with being embedded in a tribe of similar like-minded people. Yeah. And, so, and so it brings, the institution itself brings a lot Just as a vague kind of concept, it brings a lot to a human, existence. And, obviously there's a lot of other groups, being in chess club does too, and being, in a philosophy club or a book club, each of those bring those kind of different elements. But obviously, and this, when you're talking about very mystical experiences like the soul and the heaven and hell, and, it kind of takes on a different value and a different weight than just like,
seems a little more meaningful than chess club.
Yeah. I would say, dude, I don't know. There was people in my high school. Chess was life. Chess for life.
Really?
Yeah, dude, man. Like, chess is the ultimate logical game, and you're playing with another logical entity. It's like the ultimate battle of minds, moving position.
I didn't have a chess club in my high school. We barely had math.
Oh, don't worry. I wasn't in chess club.
Oh.
I was not smart enough to be in chess club, and I know how to play chess. But when I say I know how to play chess, I know how to play it as a system. I don't know how to play smart or well.
You don't know any of the strategies?
No, I'm terrible at it. And you know what? I love playing it. And I lived with this several years ago. I lived with this with a couple, and the guy was always down. We would come back from work, and I'd be on my computer doing whatever, playing video games or resting from the day. And he would come downstairs and be like, "Hey, John, you want to play chess?" And I took that bait every single time. And he would even tell me, he was such a, and I don't know, people maybe if you want to write in the comments if you play chess what this actually means, but he was so advanced in terms of his chess meisterliness and his master chessfulness that he would be able to tell me, I'd make a move and he'd be like, "Don't do that.
Take that back.
Move it to this square. Move it to this because you don't want to do that. Because in that move, I'm going to do this. You're going to reply with this, and then I'm going to have you in check." And I was like, How did you know?
Yeah, chess is weird. Like it's a weird paradox. Like you just want to play with someone that is just as hesitant to play with you because as soon as the more hyped someone is to play chess, the more you want to avoid them.
Exactly. Let that be a note to let that be your wariness in your chess journeys in life.
Yeah.
The more jubilant they are to play you in chess, I would say the greater the degree of pain you're going to experience.
Yeah. Remember that, kids. Write that down.
I don't even know if the kids today know what chess is, if that's even a thing.
It's on the computers.
Oh, yeah. It's on the internets. It's on the AOL dial-ups. So, so I was raised in that minutia, and my dad and my mom, despite my mom being raised in a Catholic family, my dad being Southern Baptist, which is very fire and brimstone, very fear-oriented, is my perception of it. They were very, they really gravitated towards the much more ecumenical, open-minded, just the much more progressive, and we're going to help people and we're going to care about them. It doesn't matter who you are, what walk of life you come from. Jesus says, come as you are, and that's what we embody, and that's what we did. So I would say now that's a great picture. But when I would say, as I was growing up, I started seeing kind of what I perceived as the cracks in the facade. And, I had all these questions, and I was not, as now, I'll go ahead and spill the beans. I consider myself a very spiritual atheist. But back then, I talked to my pastor. I talked to the people. I was still going to church camp, which I still love for, not necessarily the religion. That was actually my least favorite part is the Bible study. I loved the building things, the setting up the ropes course, the team building exercises with the kids. I love the improv at the campfires. I love the family, the comfortability of being with all those amazing people that were super love and embracing. And, I talked to all those counselors and I talked to everybody, and, the answer they kept coming back with is the big F, is faith. And, faith is believing in something that, you have no proof of or there's no verification for. It's not an empirical concept.
Yeah.
It's empirical means you can prove it's experienced. You can prove it with by experimenting on it. You can show it physically. And there really isn't that. And so I very quickly, I would say in my teens, kind of drifted hard into kind of an angsty existential atheism. And and then it kind of built the foundation for me to grow and learn and read books and talk to people and just everybody from every walk of life and try to, back then what my parents called me, which I still think is hilarious, as we've spoken, as we've gotten older and our relationship has changed from parent to child to adult, that they referred to me as an evangelical atheist because I would try to go to people and get them to convert to what I thought was the right path and what I thought was the smart path. And obviously, I was very much in the wrong, and I was very pretentious for doing so. And I was very, that just kind of told you everything about that evangelical mindset as it applies to any religion. I've got the answers. My agenda is that you are in the wrong, and I'm going to teach you. And that was, obviously a fallacy. And, that was me being toxic, to throw that back. I'm sure I turned off a lot of potential, friends who otherwise just had different beliefs but were ultimately good people. But back then I couldn't see that. I was very consumed by, these adults being consumed with this very untenable, scientifically, just incredibly improbable and incredulous thing. And, but luckily I've grown a lot over the course of my life. And I don't know if you knew me back then. I don't think you ever saw me, but not. A lot of people have. And that
was emo John, right?
That was emo gothic, up until my mid-20s, and still emo at heart, but physically, phenotypically, I'm much more.
Your heart's just sad.
I just got a sad heart. You cut me open, and it's just weeping inside of me.
Just a pouty face.
Oh, me. But yeah, so I mean that's kind of that's my experience up to that point. I'm curious to know, because I don't think you and I have really talked a lot about this.
No, we haven't.
What was your experience of? What was your perception? What was your primary modality of parsing and analyzing experience and making sense of all this as you were growing up?
So I was raised Christian. I don't know about all those Baptists and Presbyterians and all that. And I was a Christian.
I was the one true faith. I don't know about all those diet Christianities.
Yeah, no. We were about as mainstream Christian as you could get. We went to Six Flags over Jesus.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Little Southeast Christian church.
Yeah, they got a Jumbotron.
Yeah, they got everything in there.
They got gyms. They actually offer therapy there too, but it's through obviously a Christian lens.
Yeah. Shouldn't church be therapy?
So that's actually interesting. We can talk about that. Actually, in the 50s, prior to the advent of psychoanalysis and behaviorism, churches were actually where you would go to get counseling.
Interesting.
Yeah, you would go to your pastor. That's
actually
toxic. Yeah, right. Oh yeah, your husband's abusive and everything's bad. You know what? You should pray on it.
Mm-hmm. Couple Hail Marys will do you good.
You know what? And maybe you're just a bad wife. You ever thought about that? Maybe the ham's not well cooked when he gets home from dinner. He works hard.
Did you actually listen to what he said as he was hitting you?
That's some dark. But it's true, And anyway, that's in the Stanford psychedelic experience book I'm reading right now, which is the Harvard psychedelic experience, which is an amazing book about just a quick plug, which is about the '60s, and it has Ram Dass and Houston Smith, Andrew Weil, and Timothy Leary, and they were kind of the four horsemen, along with all these other, like Aldous Huxley, the British poet who came over to the States, and all these other people that influenced the psychedelic movement in the 60s. And anyway, they talk about that and how, Houston Smith is a, oh my God, I'm going to get this. It's either Houston Smith or Andrew Weil, but they're a theologist. And so they talk about each of their backgrounds. And he talks about how that before the advent of psychoanalysis, that was in the 60s and 70s, how it was very much, that was your kind of go-to. So yeah, that's all. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Routing back.
I was just listening. All right. So Southeast Christian. Yeah, whole family was pretty much they were religious, but it's not like church every Sunday sort of thing. It was church whenever my grandma would guilt us enough to go to church with her. But everyone still definitely believed in God, to the point to where when I started questioning things like you, I
think everyone does. Everyone
should.
Has those tests of what, if you stay in there, that it's referred to as, your faith is being tested, or you're having doubts.
I think everyone should question it. I'm not saying what you should decide, but I mean, I don't think anyone should just blindly follow anything. I think you should question everything, and then if you decide, this is right, then stay there. But I started questioning I'll go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I started questioning things, but didn't really want to come out with those thoughts because I probably would have got what's it called, the electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
That's probably what they would have signed me up for. So I just acted like
this boy's got demons in his brain.
Yeah, I just went along with the flow. I didn't want to get exercised. So once I turned like 18, I was like, I don't believe this shit anymore.
Just declare it. Throw your hat on the ground. Take your gloves off one finger at a time and throw them on the table dramatically. I don't subscribe to this anymore.
Yeah, and my mom, I think at that point, was it? Yeah, about the point. I didn't really tell everyone. I pretty much just told her. But she wasn't very happy with it. So I had done since I was like 13, I'd been doing like all this research and like really questioning things, trying to figure out how I felt about it. And then once I finally told her, she was obviously not happy.
Yeah, probably really devastated.
So much so that she tried to talk me back into it and try to question all these things, but I had done way more research on the topic than her, so inadvertently I kind of
disclaimer, reading the Bible is not sufficient research.
Yeah, you can't really
it's important to do, and it's important if that's the subscription, to make sure you read the holy text that your religion is based on, and that the individuals that you choose to subscribe to their interpretation of, making sure you've done your due diligence. But that is I think that kind of gives you a myopic view into what you're saying. That's kind of like, taking one chair and saying, this is chair and all chairs are like this. And this is the only chair. I know everything about this chair, but it's like, okay, but what about ottomans? What about lazy boys?
Yeah.
What about stools?
No, because the chair said so. She trying to talk me back into believing in God, and talking to me and through my thought process and all that, I inadvertently started talking her out of believing in God.
Oh, wow.
And that is not fun. So
yeah.
I was freshly, I guess, atheist. I don't know. I wouldn't call myself that now, but back then definitely atheist. I didn't believe in anything. But I had never tried to talk anyone out of it. I mean, I didn't really care to talk to anyone about it because I had my opinion, but talking someone out of their faith.
you were kind enough to not try to talk people out of the clothes they've been wearing their whole life, whereas I was aggressively, I wanted everyone to be unclothed.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I might have got to that point if it wasn't for this, because the very first interaction I had with it, where I accidentally started talking her out of it, it devastated her. Like watching someone completely change from like, I mean, if you believe in God, that's pretty much what your whole reality is based in, right? So having that kind of slowly yanked away from you, or at least open your mind to the possibility that it might not be true, and you didn't want that to happen.
Oh, I'm sure that's terrifying.
Yeah, so she started getting depressed, and it was honestly pretty bad. So I eventually was like, we're not talking about this anymore, and maybe you're right. Maybe there is a God. Who's to say?
Who's to say?
Who's to say?
Who's to say?
So after not talking about it long enough, she just fell back into believing in it, and we just don't talk about it anymore. That's how we deal with that.
Well, and see, contrastingly, my parents, because my brother and I have an older half-brother, I'm sorry, I always say that, half-brother, and who I consider, he's an amazing human being, an amazing father, and he's in the Air Force. And he definitely was kind of, he got absorbed into that Southern Baptist kind of mentality. And but my younger brother and I were raised, but he was also raised by my mother in a different time of her life where things were very different, very chaotic, very... my mom lived on welfare, and it was a very different experience for her, a very different reality for her. And so, but my brother and I were both raised in a very open-minded kind of milieu where we could question things, and we could. And so he and I both pretty much at the inception of the doubts where they materialized into what we realized were the foundations of our beliefs today, we were like, we're not want to go to church anymore. It's we don't believe in this. It doesn't do anything for us. We like seeing the people there, and it's a nice social event. But we really don't want to go because we don't. Sorry, my birds.
That's a bird.
That's my birds. They're participating in the conversation. They're like, your soul is damned. You will burn in eternal hellfire. But we told them, and my parents refused. I think it was probably my mom, but both of them agreed, as we've talked about this recently, that they didn't want my brother and I to be faithless. They didn't want us to not have any practice. But what that discounts is the fact that we were raised in a Presbyterian environment, and we were raised, to respect others, to love everyone regardless of who they are, to give everybody, the benefit of the doubt, to trust and respect everybody, because that's all you have. That's all that's all you have to give. And so we already had those ingrained in us. We just didn't realize that yet at the time. But so my mom refused to just let us go without anything. So she made me read books on Buddhism, took us to all these different churches, all these different faiths, and they and again, like kind of is what I want to call the well, I don't want to name that person. There's an effect that happens when you force somebody to do something that you think will better than them against their will, and it turns them into every experience that you force them to have actually creates a negative valence, and they're not going to benefit from it because they're waiting for it to be over rather than being present to it and seeing what there is to value. So that was kind of our experience, and my parents and I, we're very close. We have a very great adult-to-adult relationship now that I'm in my 30s, and they're in their 60s and 70s, and amazing people. But I have love and nothing but respect for them, and they did amazing jobs with my brothers and I. And anyway, so and their religion, their worldview has really changed. My dad is part of a spiritual journeys group at his church, which is very progressive, where they talk about. My dad was telling me they actually read books from Sam Harris, who is an atheist, and they were talking about his book, Waking Up Without, being spiritual without religion, and talk about all these different. They also read books about different folklorist and different philosophical authors who write about different perspectives and human experience through the lens of religion and mystical, and spirituality. And my mom is just very spiritual. She's very, there's a force and energy and everything. And so we all kind of, are more ingrained. We're all kind of more on the same page there now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It just took several decades.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to happen with my family. They're pretty into God. I don't really talk to them anymore though. Just my mom. So I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, well, and I think what you talked about earlier really resonates with me, that, you had that conviction for the atheism, to use that word, kind of an ironic inversion of how it's really used. You had that atheist conviction, which I had for a very long time. And, your experience of talking to her about it was terrifying for her and really scary. And a lot of the time I had that same experience with a lot of people too, as I would talk to them, and I was very, of course, I thought I had all the facts, I had all the information, I had memorized all the, the Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, the Sam Harris, the Daniel Dennett, all of those authors that really, I had, anthologies of atheistic philosophies, I had all these ways to argue people, but what I was missing was the very human element that comes with when your perception of reality is altered without your permission or without your understanding of that or without your anticipation of that. It can be extremely jarring. And, something that I've realized is that, when you subscribe or when you really read into, the Eastern religions, there are gods, and there are Buddha was not a god, and he was, he was deified by people not in a secular sense, and really, but he was more of a mentor and a practitioner and a leader. And you have all these other people, there are, gods in there, but it's not the same way that the Abrahamic religions, kind of that the Old Testament vitriolic, almost jealous girlfriend, like God, you didn't do this, you didn't. Vindictive. Oh yeah. Very, very punitive. Very, you didn't listen to what I said. I gave you people free will, but when you did what you wanted to do, and it's not what I wanted you to do. And, and this is a very cursory view of that. Obviously there's more nuances, but it's anyway, the point of what I'm saying is that the Eastern religions really have a very different worldview than the kind of the American, which is fascinating because there's a great book by Susan Jacoby called Free Thinkers, and it's the history of the first, like Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, everyone who came over here, when we, in 1776 to found, to the Emancipation Proclamation came over here, that we were really founded as a, to be free from religion, to be, to really have that ability to escape that puritanical. Now, obviously it's more complicated and, dealt with taxes and everything else. I don't know as much about that as I probably should for speaking about it. But what I do know is that, we have kind of become there's kind of a big vein that views anything that's not the status quo or that, the traditional kind of conservative, I would say more, let's just, I'll try to keep the political jargon removed, but they're more traditional viewpoints, and the way that things have always been this way and they need to be this way and the order needs to be preserved. There is kind of this guiding tenet, which is that, it's guided, the value that's embedded in that is hard to remove for people. And not just the traditionalists and the people that really subscribe to that, but also just casual people who have always thought that way. When you talk to them about that, you're not just talking with them about a concept. You're not just saying, 2 + 2 actually equals 3, because when you think about numbers in this way, you're not just saying that. What you're saying is that the fundamental attribution that they make to the universe as it being orderly and crafted by a conscious deistic being is fundamentally different than that. That threatens a lot of the integrity of their values. Like, if God doesn't exist, then what does being good mean? What does being a good Christian have to do with anything?
It kind of sets you back to square one.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like everything that you've thought just kind of starts to crumble and cave in on itself. And so obviously for anyone who's defending an idea, the idea is to double down. Obviously the best idea, the scientific, empirical, objective way would be to look objectively at what you're saying, compare it synthetically, and then create a new analysis if there's new information. But when you come down to talking, about values, that's not how people work.
Yeah.
Values are not objective. They're very, very subjective, and they're deeply ingrained so far in us that, when I was studying cognitive behavior therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy to help my anxiety, and we got to the section on values, which is they're values-based therapies, and you always want to move in the direction of your values. I didn't know what they were. I was like, I know I have good values because I'm a good person and I care about people and I recycle and, I try to leave a low carbon impact on the environment and I help people, but then when I was like, but what are my values, And, it was an interesting experience to actually dig down and kind of identify the symptoms of your anxiety, which I think are your behaviors, which then explain that kind of mysterious, nebulous word values that are, somewhere inside of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically you just really can't talk people out of their religion unless they want to actually have a real debate. Most people, when they want to have a religious debate, it's because they want to convince you. Most people, when they want to have any sort of debate, is because they want to convince you of their idea.
That agenda. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I really don't even talk about it with people anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the older that I get, I realize, like, as we've talked about before outside of the podcast, like when I don't bring it up unless other people bring up their views as though they are universal. Like they're like, yeah, I went to church and, God was there and I know God's looking out for me. And I'm like, yeah, I have a very different experience. I think that, God, I don't think that, and I posit my, secular viewpoint, because if they're, I'm not just going to be like, oh, okay. I'm going to be like, well, you feel comfortable sharing what you believe, theologically to be, the truth. So I'm going to tell you what my perception of things are too. But other than that, like you said, like I'm very reluctant now. Because, people really don't, like you said, unless they have an agenda, most people just kind of go about their day and do the best they can.
Mm-hmm. If someone says that to me, if someone starts talking about God to me, I just leave it alone. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I just don't even
cool belief, bro.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about it. That's great. I'm glad that you have faith in something that you can actually rely on, and you feel like you understand the way the universe works and everything. But yeah. I just don't really believe that. See, the reason I said I wouldn't really consider myself atheist anymore is because, atheist means you don't really believe in anything.
Well, it's
right?
atheistic. So theistic means God or ruler. As it's a prefix, is applied means not or the opposite. Yeah. So, there is no ruler there is no God is what it technically. There's none. There's none.
So, I'm open-minded about it. I believe that there could be something out there because we know so little about the universe and how it works, and there's so little about everything. Yeah. But what I don't believe is our version of the Christian God. Yeah, Sky Daddy. Because the Bible's just been retranslated so many times into languages that don't actually translate into each other, and people have messed with it and edited it and one of their own agendas put in, like Mr. King James.
Yep, I was going to say that.
So, I don't know. It seems that there's almost no way that the Bible is word for word what it actually was when it was written.
Well, and I mean, and without getting too controversial, and I hope that, anyone who's listening to this comes to this knowing this is simply our experience, and this is what I have learned and what Kyle has learned. And we're not, again, like Kyle said earlier, it's not our job to tell anyone how to believe or think. This is just, this is a dialogue, and this is what we're talking about. From my experience, there is no evidence that Jesus existed. There's only one mystic who is said to exist in the area in the valley of the Middle East where he was supposed to be in that time where he was supposed to be writing. Mm-hmm. And he was just a mystic. There was one man, he wasn't even called Jesus. And so, I mean, what I think could have probably happened is there was a mystic during that time because all the writings that came after were published and condensed hundreds of years after his death. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a very real possibility, like any religion, that they are based on these, because when I was an undergrad, something that really helped bolster my kind of my antithetical views to Christianity and religion as an organized whole and the precepts it holds to be absolutely universally true and inerrant is the big word. That means it's, not wrong, like it's very true. There's no faults in it, is that, when you look at the history of humankind, we started, and this is me putting on my anthropologist throne hat, mm-hmm. We came from an animistic and pantheistic kind of moorings, which is that animistic means the environment and everything around us, like a volcano would erupt and kill everybody. And they would say, oh, well, we didn't do something right, so we have to sacrifice somebody, or we have to do this dance or this ritual. That is, what in behavioral world we call superstitious reinforcement. Yeah. I will shake my body in this way, and then a rain happens to come a day later, and there's that connection.
That's the rain
dance.
That's
the rain. That's it. I wish it would have been a little bit more fun to do, and it didn't take 30 hours, but that's what the gods require. And and then you go to pantheistic, which is all these different gods, like when you have in like the Sumerian religions and the Egyptian, the Roman, the Greek, where you have all these different gods that are very human and very faulty, they mess up all the time, and they all have sex with each other, and they're all these incestuous relationships, and all these, you have all these different gods of all these micro, and then some of that is, in kind of the Hinduism and all the pantheistic gods, and and how somehow we got to where there's only one God, or the Godhead, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, and how. What's interesting to me is Richard Dawkins, or maybe it was Bertrand Russell, some great mind said, everybody is an atheist, but atheist just goes one God further. Which I really like, because if you go to a Christian, you say, well, do you believe in Ra, or any of the, I'm trying to think of the Egyptian gods, like Pluto? Do you believe in Neptune? Do you believe in Bacchus, the god of wine? They're like, no, of course not. I believe in my one true God. And it's like, well, but if you had been born in that society, mm-hmm. and you were in that minutia and in that zeitgeist, the spirit of those times, like there really wouldn't have been any other option, So it really shows that the social manufacturing of those ideas is kind of inherent in in the society you exist within.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't want anyone to like change their faith or anything. I just want everyone to really think about it. I don't want you to just take it because
this is just us. Like, this is not, we're not here to tell you like one way believe one way or the other, like, and nobody will be. I think that's the thing, like nobody will be shifted by this.
No.
But I think it's fascinating to talk about, and I think I'm sorry, did you have more to say?
No.
So one of my favorite experiences that I've ever had in my life was when I worked at let me rephrase this, when I worked at Radio Shack, which sounds, so by the way, I did not like that job. I was not a salesperson. I did not like the metrics. I did not perform well because I just wanted to build meaningful social relationships with the customers and help them, and that was not a way that you keep a business afloat. They wanted
that's not how corporations work.
No, they don't, some of them say that and some of them actually act on that, but a lot of them, it's more of they're paying a winking kind of lip service to it, but what they really mean is get the people to trust you so you can sell them more shit they don't need.
Batteries.
Dude. Oh man, we were so. I guess we can talk about this now that Radio Shack's like dissolved in Chapter 11.
Oh, are they?
I think so. I think they're just privately owned. There's a few that are privately owned, and they were stocked from private online stores. But batteries, dude. Oh, and anyone out there who's worked at Radio Shack in the last 5 or 10, you know what I'm talking about. Batteries was just free. Was like liquid gold to them. It was just everywhere, and they made so much money off that attached. So anyway. batteries was the currency of Radio Shack verticality in order to raise your career status. So anyway, we always had a lot of people coming and going. I worked there for about 2 years, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less. And there was a guy there named Jeffrey Cruz, and his initials were JC, which I think is really ironic. This man was beautiful, and JC, if you ever listen to this, you're just such a good person. Please keep doing what you're doing. He was a what is it called? A seminary student. So he was studying to be a preacher or a pastor or to go to other countries to be a missionary. He worked there. He was very handsome. He had. I don't exactly know where he's from. He had beautiful, darker skin, just, kind of shorter guy, very well built, super nice guy, was nice to everybody. You could really tell that he believed what he was talking about. And I don't remember how it happened or what this context was, but we were having a slow day, as you do at Radio Shack. And we just, we sat down and we just talked. And we talked for about an hour and a half straight all the way through. We talked about, I think it was maybe the Kenneth Ham and Bill Nye debate, which is what I think maybe it was around that time.
Was it?
I think maybe I'm misremembering the time, but it was somewhere around there. And
so could have been. That's probably like 10 years old now.
Yeah, and we talked about that, and we just talked about our beliefs. And when I asked him very objectively why he believed what he did, he asked me very objectively why I believed what I did. And we talked about, science, about religion, about history, about art, about the human spirit, about the soul. And at the very end of that, none of us had changed each other's minds. We both had our convictions. But what I thought was really meaningful and powerful is that we were able to have that discussion without any judgment, without any, and we went on to be friends while I worked there. It didn't affect anything. I didn't change the way I felt about him. Probably maybe changed the way he felt about me. You probably saw that I was beyond saving. I'm saying that jokingly. He's such a great guy. He's a big heart and just loves everybody and really embodies that kind of that aspect of that religious tradition. And and it was just great. And I think that's so important. And I think multiple politicians and people over the years have said, we can't just keep sitting in our silos and, taking pot and, shooting projectiles at each other's silos. We need to break down the walls and build bridges and say like, yeah, well, I still live in here, but I can meet you in the middle. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, it is. That's a nice, healthy debate there. You don't get many of those.
No, you really don't. And I think, I think it's a very natural. I mean, we naturally are driven heuristically, which is the mind's channels that it creates over increased and continued neuronal activity of a particular thought or action pattern. So if you think a certain thought about a certain person frequently, or the way that you act and the way that you behave, your brain is like, oh, let's make a shortcut. Let's Control L that, and then whenever you need to do this, you'll just hit Control L in your brain's computer, and then you'll do it without even thinking about it. It saves energy and space and mental processing. And so I think our heuristics are just, we are attracted to sameness. We're attracted to the people, the path of least resistance. We like the things that we think validate us, that give us value. And anything separate to that, it's not a natural, easy process to say, I will give that a shot. I'm gonna check that out.
Mm-hmm. This episode's turned into religion.
I told you it would.
Let's move on.
Okay. So what is the point of this, the reason we started out is, and that gave you a healthy dose of kind of where we're coming from, and show you, that, people who maybe don't have the same beliefs, are just as, what I've realized is that everybody just wants to survive. Everyone just wants to get through the day, outside of on the bell end of the curve, a few psychopaths, sociopaths, and, straight out, just terrible people who lost the genetic lottery and the environment lottery and the trauma lottery. There's just a few people that really want to chaos, but everybody else just wants to be happy and they want to survive and live a life they value. And when I realized that, it really changes the kind of separation of us. It really makes us all universal in our desire for the pleasure, for happiness and to live a good life in the pursuit of all things that feel good.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, most of those people that are trying to debate you, in quotes, that are trying to change your mind, think that they're saving your eternal soul. So they're actually trying to do you a favor in their mind.
Exactly. And see, that is the kind of clarity and wisdom that I never realized for 10 years or longer. I always, whenever people would say, you go through Chick-fil-A and like have a blessed day, that would boil my skin because I was like, how are you pushing this onto me? This is so unfair. Like, I'm not like, hope you have a secular day. I hope you have a scientific day. Not that I would ever do that, but, and then I talked to so many people and they're like, that's just their way of wishing you well. And it took me a while to unpair that, and that was my own ignorance, my own toxicity. And then I realized, it's just, that's just their way, in their lens, their mosaic, their tile in the mosaic of human experience and perception of human experience and experience of reality. That's just their way of saying.
Yeah, in their minds, and the owners of Chick-fil-A minds, I know they've done bad things lately that everybody's very upset about. But in the minds of the Chick-fil-A owners, they're like doing the best thing they possibly could do. Yeah. They've got this franchise and they're using their influence to try to save everyone's soul.
Exactly.
And making damn good chicken.
Yeah, I could not stomach their lobbying and politics for a long time. And then I think I had a friend, there was nowhere else open or anything else, and I went and tried there, and I was just like, oh my God, I think I get it. I'm having a religious experience. This chicken is changing me fundamentally. There is, and he makes chicken.
There is a God, and he's a chicken.
And he is a chicken. So, we started this discussion in the realm of human experience, and I think that maybe now we can take this, because we really talked about our personal experiences and where we were. Let's move one level up and talk about the nature of reality and how we perceive that. Yeah. You ready for this?
Dude, I'm so ready for this.
All right, well, I'm going to let you go first because I know you're excited to talk about your perceptions.
I love this topic. Simulation
Let's do it.
Okay. So, simulation theory. I just like it because it's very perplexing to think about, especially if you've never thought about it before. But
yeah, I hadn't thought a lot. I have a book called the holographic universe, and it's kind of about that. But I got like a fifth into it and was like, I don't understand this at all.
Yeah, simulation theory. Basically, it sounds goofy, but it's basically like the movie The Matrix. It's basically that. And comparing it to The Matrix.
You know that the movie The Matrix, watched by the Wazowski sisters, they changed genders. They're the Wazowski sisters.
What? Are you serious?
Yep. Look it up. The Wazowski brothers both had sex change operations, and they're the sisters. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Those brothers or sisters?
Yeah, those brothers or sisters. I mean, that's amazing. Good for them if they felt uncomfortable in their bodies. I mean, that's amazing. They're at home in their skin now. But the reason, that's a side tangent to what I really wanted to say. I just had to put that out there because I think that's so interesting. That movie, The Matrix, is actually about. It's built on the philosophy of the brain in a vat theory, which is again simulation, which is your brain is in this vat and it's being fed all this external signals which create and construct this external world, but you're really just a brain in a vat in a room somewhere.
So, I mean, right there, it's basically simulation theory. So either your brain in a vat in a room somewhere, or you're literally just computer code that's experiencing this. Because, I mean, all consciousness is, if you really dive into it, is just your senses and memories and all that stuff, So, I mean,
composed by neurons at the basic level, in the way that your brain, as an organism designed to experience reality, processes it.
Yeah. So, like honestly, if you were a computer simulation and someone programmed all of your memories up until this point into you, and then they pressed go, it wouldn't feel like all of it. It wouldn't feel like you're just gonna let that go. The birds are acting up. Sorry.
Shush.
If someone programmed all of your memories and everything up until this moment right now into you, and then press go right now, this could honestly be your first moment actually conscious and alive.
Oh my God, yeah, that just reminded me. That's what people will say when they talk about like when you wake up every day, like you wake up from sleep, like how do you know that everything prior to your rising wasn't just a memory it was inserted, and that this is the first day you've actually been alive?
You don't. And that's really cool, I think.
I would argue that you do.
Why?
Okay, let's do this. So,
let's do it.
This is the savage part of the discourse. So to me, what I know is so here's the problem with, I think that, not simulation theory as a whole, but that you cannot know that which precedes every millisecond of your experience. Like how, right now, how do I know that's not a feed that's just generating these? And the reason and the thing that makes it even more difficult is there was a great documentary on Netflix called The X Explained, and it was about brain and consciousness and psychedelics and memory and things like that. The mind is really the memory. The way that we recall memories is not like pulling up a photograph. It's a largely creative process. And so when you do that, you're not remembering a stamp, a physical with all the properties, the 3-dimensional, the 4-dimensional, the time element. You're remembering a very rough contour that's coded by your amygdala, which is in the limbic system, which codifies your memories with positive, negative valence and fear and pleasure. And so you're really remembering this kind of hazy picture that your brain converts into this highly rasterized, very high fidelity image in a lot of cases. And that's what people call it. It's called like the cognitive deterioration. There's a word for it. There's a phenomenon that like cognitive drift. And so like, for example, in the documentary, they talked about how people remembered 9/11 whenever it happened, the attacks on the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001 in America. I'm assuming I'm assuming we have an international audience. We need to explain that. And up on my throne again. And how when people remember that, they would talk about it and they would be like, I remember exactly where I was. I was on this street, at the corner of this street, the smoke plume. I remember the ashes and the people screaming. I remember the number of the taxi that was next to me. And then when they examine it through forensics and through a reconstruction of that, it's completely wrong. They actually, so what you see is that memory is a composite of what your memories really were, what you have heard, and what your brain has synthesized from what other people tell you about their experiences. So like someone will be like, I remember being on the street, and what they actually were was in a building that was not even facing the World Trade Center. And that was because maybe they spoke to somebody who told them their story, and their brain composed that. There's also, they looked and they said about a memory deteriorates by about, and there's no real way to put a number on this, but they said about 20% a year, if I'm remembering it correctly. So when you think of anything longer than 5 years ago, that is largely not a recreation. It's your mind waxing imaginational.
Yeah. Well, I get all that.
No. So the reason I'm saying all that is that complicates the issue. So when you think back about those experiences, it can have that effect. Like it can have like, well, I don't really remember, because if we remembered every millisecond of every moment of our lives, I don't think we would be an adaptive, because part of what the central nervous system does is not tell your brain what it needs to know. It tells it what it doesn't need to know. And I think we may have talked about that before. So I think if it was this completely open system where it retained every service, every jot and tittle of just the molecular makeup of every experience in your sensory, I don't think we would be able to do anything except sit like a server farm, like just sit. And so what I'm saying is that none of that. So the problem, I think, is with all of those things, when we think of memory, it has that illusion of being kind of wavy and kind of not hazy. And so what I think that does is lend credence to the simulation theory. But what I think simulation theory does is kind of play on those natural moments where so let's say we were a being that never went to sleep, and we never engaged in any activities that changed our psycho, and that changed our perception of reality. So we never exercised, we never deprived ourselves of oxygen, we never slept, we never took any intoxicants like alcohol or drugs.
Just one stream of consciousness.
I don't know if simulation theory would hold as much, because I guess what you're saying is that it's still being fed in moment to moment.
I don't think that just because it's not a timestamp and just because we don't have a photographic memory really changes anything. You could just, the way that the simulation is set up is that memories work the way they do. Like it's hazy.
Is the next step up is that there's a server farm that's beyond our comprehension that allows this to happen?
I don't know. Okay. Maybe. I'm sure that's one theory.
Okay.
It's just the logic behind the theory is Moore's law, which is in our reality, or maybe this is the only reality, but in reality, you
could say in this reality.
Yeah, in this reality,
the one that we all agree on.
Yeah. Processing power of computers has steadily
doubles
every year and a half, I believe.
Yeah.
So that's called Moore's law. So it's exponential growth. That's why your cell phone has 10 times more power than the first spaceship that went to the moon, because everything just keeps on getting stronger and stronger. So they're not sure if Moore's law is actually a law that is going to hold up forever, or if eventually we're going to be like, oh man, we can't keep up with this. Processing power is not going to double every 2 years. You know what I mean? But as of right now, it is. And if it does keep doing that, that means that we're basically going to have infinite power. I mean, not infinite, but very huge.
Like we'll find a cell that like the deterioration of the energy is so microscopic that it almost has like endless, or something like the torus shape or something that generates endless in energy or whatever. I think it's called that.
And with that kind of power, I mean, we're going to do things that we can't even conceive right now. But something we could definitely do is a ancestor simulation. So we could go back and simulate other worlds, other realities, our own reality, any of that stuff. And there's many reasons to do that. I mean, humans just do stuff because it's cool. But also, if we're trying to solve,
we sure do.
Yeah, if we're trying
because it feels good.
If we're trying to solve a problem, like let's say trying to solve cancer at this point, you could do that and see how these beings
play out like seeds of a scenario.
Yeah. So, and then the thought process is that you get the microprocessor that strong, they simulate that reality, and then eventually they get to that same point you were at. They've come up with that same technology, and then they make a simulation inside of their simulation. It's sort of like this Inception thing, and it just keeps on going and going and going. And the Elon Musk talks about this a lot.
So does Ray Kurzweil.
And he says like the chances that we're in base reality, which is basically the first one that's not a simulation, when there's all of these like rabbit holes you can go down, is almost impossible if you believe it. Of course, Moore's law could not hold up.
What strikes me is and not to take like and I that's interesting. I definitely, I mean, it sounds fascinating, and it's really it's definitely a competitive or a competitor to what we really think of, as just kind of being the one universal. Like things just are physical in the world, and they just exist that way because matter has to bind in patterns, and things build on each other. And at the medium level that we're at, we can perceive that. And if we were like too far micro or too far macro, it would be a completely different experience. But it makes me, what that also kind of tells me is that it's very subtle and that it's very innocuous. Like it's like almost like, well, if that's true, then things are the way they are. Like,
it doesn't change.
It doesn't change anything. Yeah, it's just not like things could not have been otherwise.
Yeah, like, no, it's not like it.
Because even if it's in a simulation, we are still in that seed, in that progression of that particular, that offshoot of one reality seed.
Exactly.
And so if that's
all the
problems,
case, all the questions we have, like, is there a God, whatever, all that still applies to the first reality.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it doesn't change anything. It's just like a thought experiment. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, I like that.
That's one of the cool things about it, is there's literally no implications.
Exactly. That's what's so amazing about it. It has no impact at all.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at all.
That's okay. I like that. That's interesting. Unlike some ideas that are very vitriolic and matter a lot because they can take people's lives, or they can absorb a large part of your childhood, or they can, that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. We haven't talked about that prior to now.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. Well, obviously the counter to that, there's a lot of different, like the holographic universe is like a hologram is like when light hits something and it refracts and you get an image of it, but it's actually a combination of all these different elements, and it creates this illusion that something is physical or this 3D, that's really fascinating too. But again, it kind of has that same where it's like, okay, but that doesn't have any practical, pragmatic implication. It's just another way that we can view the world. And, when people get really into quantum physics, and there's so much theoretical science out there, and there's so many amazing people with all these incredible experiences, all these doctorates, just this incredible amount of information that I will never be able to understand, the problem with some of that is that when you take quantum physics, and what I hear a lot of people say, especially who are not in that field, maybe even people are, and they are, and again, I could be completely wrong. Maybe that's the truth, and I'm the ignoramus eating dirt. Is that when you take a micro level, micro, way beyond what we can perceive, and you apply that micro level phenomenon to a macro level sense systems nested within each other, there really isn't any implication. Like there really isn't any real world manifestation of how that would extrapolate and how that would dial up to that level. And so again, like when you look into a lot of this stuff, it just seems very interesting and theoretical and fascinating. And it's great. Like I'm glad that all those different thoughts are out there, and there's all these different people with different perceptions of reality that that add to this iterative process of science that allow us to continue to process reality in all these different silos. But they all, because that gives us this incredible wealth of ideas that we can look into and we can Google and we can YouTube and then that really help us, that maybe explain and bring us a little bit closer to what our internal kind of natural biological convictions and biases about reality are.
Yeah, I mean it's a very healthy debate as long as you're open-minded and you're willing to debate it without pushing your own agenda, and honestly realize you don't know. You really can't know. Like honestly, I mean, just be respectful, have the debate, keep an open mind. Except for flat earthers, they're just wrong.
Oh, God. Yeah, let's talk about that experience of reality. That's a great segue into universal reality. And I think maybe we've kind of answered, this is the final section we had to talk about, but I think we've kind of answered that question, is that it's kind of what we agree reality is. It's kind of like universal reality, I think, is kind of a doomed paradox, because we're assuming that everyone so here's the thing. There's two ways to look at this. One is that it exists external to us. Like if we all died out, if humans all died, things would be as they are. Now that's what I think. I think that we are just organisms that are very evolved and we have these incredible frontal lobes that give us this leg up and advantage on a lot of other creatures that in other ways they're more advanced to suit their environment, adaptable than we are. And but you have that external world that exists and is kind of like a force that presses onto organisms and forces them to adapt and survive because of the natural processes that are chemical and just happen in the physical world, versus that the world out there kind of exists in that way, but there's an interface between what we think is real and what is real, and that we all agree kind of socially on what that is. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, what is universal reality? Is there universal reality? I think what helps me sleep easier at night is to think that there is a universal reality, and that I'm just a physical object with this incredible brain that creates these phenomena and illusions of singularity and of interface and interaction. That helps me then, rather than thinking that my version of reality is that I can perceive as so mundane and boring that things are just the way they are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think to shift gears into a philosophical kind of perspective, to find magnificence in the mundane, I think is really that's what I try to when I meditate. Like I've thought that for years, maybe not in those terms, but like to find beauty in the mundane, in the bucolic, in the boring, and in the is really is to find beauty in every moment.
Yeah, I mean, if you can look deep enough, nothing's mundane.
True.
I mean, the fact that everything's made out of these tiny little atoms that we can't perceive, and everything's just bouncing off of each other, and like the fact that everything's here because of a big bang, nothing's mundane if you really think about it. I mean, that's easy to say though, but I mean, it's pretty boring when the internet goes out. Yeah.
That's very true. I love that. Yeah, we're well, and that just shows that we're natural organisms that are driven to find pleasure and entertain ourselves.
Dopamine, baby.
Dopamine, baby. I want that squirt, but it's like, give me that squirt of the dope.
Speaking
of. So, but I think what's interesting is that I think it's not as binary as that. It's a throwback to simulation, the code. Binary, see what I did there? I think it's not as binary because people, there's hundreds, if not thousands of books written from people that, especially, self-help books and entrepreneurs that want to sell their version of their reality that is, if you believe something and you act on it, you can make it possible. But what I think the difference is that plays by the laws of the universe, that plays by the physical world. Because if you say, I want to lose 15 pounds, well, thinking that is not going to make you lose 15 pounds. But what that will do is trigger a bunch of collateral symptomatic behaviors that kind of reverse dovetail back up into that says, well, in order to do that, I have to then act on my intake, my calorie intake. I have to act on my calorie expenditure. I have to set up my environment. And so you do. And so, but I guess the logic is that those thoughts become that reality because they inspire the actions that then result in that final product.
So then is that even really wrong then? We're talking about the law of attraction, right?
No, I guess we could.
I thought that's what you were referencing.
No, I mean, no, that is what that is. I mean, I don't know enough about the law of attraction. My understanding is the law of attraction is really more cognitive than it is behavioral. It's if you think something enough, it becomes that way, rather than thinking is the seed thinking is the gardener that sows the seeds of the behaviors that then create that change. Mm-hmm. So I don't know enough about that to say.
Yeah, I think the books that are super popular, where people like make vision boards and do all this shit. Mm-hmm. I think that's more. It's kind of giving them a magic way to get what they want. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's it is saying it's a cognitive thing. Like you define your reality based on thought. But I think it's their behaviors doing that actually just makes them focus on it 24/7, and then they see new opportunities and they end up getting that. And then in the end, they're like, "Oh my God, I changed my reality by thinking about it." But honestly, it was just the practices that did it.
Well, and I think what you just said, and it kind of reframed it for me as I was listening to you talk, like it makes me think like it is like if all it takes is that first thought to sow the seeds, like that's very powerful. Mm-hmm. Like that's life-changingly, world-alteringly powerful. But the other thing is the behavioral aspect of that. Like you have to make the changes. You have to engage in those behaviors. You have to have the dedication. You have to, to continue. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And they talk about, like you said, the vision board, the accountability mirror, having other people hold you accountable, arranging in your environment. So you have to engage, but setting behavior traps for yourself. And I think that just and so I guess I'm not trying to argue the cogency or the validity of that, because just the fact that it might exist is enough for it to be powerful. But I guess what I will say is, it's just that it exists and that it can change. Obviously not like a Hitler changed the world. Like I envision a world with millions of less people that have different beliefs than I do and that are not X, Y, Z, but more so, using it for individual. I think it's important to talk about that. Kyle's laughing at me.
Just imagine Hitler with a vision board. And they're just terrible vision.
I know, just like first point one, kill all these people. Point two, or no, sorry. First thing, entrance the masses. Second thing, set up all these prison camps. The third thing, make dinner with mother. Fourth thing, kill an endless amount of innocent people because they have a different perception of reality than I do.
Oh, bringing it back.
So yeah, you got any final thoughts or final words? I think we dived pretty deep into some stuff and then kind of, took a more leisurely jog through some other things. Is there anything else?
Focused more on religion than we planned on.
Yeah.
But that's a big topic.
We kind of knew that was going to happen.
Yeah. Closing thoughts. Be open-minded. Be nice to each other. Meditate.
There's your plug, Kyle. There's your every episode meditation plug.
Yeah. Eat motts.
Oh, eat motts. No. We Black Forest.
Whoa. You just changing like that?
I'm sorry, Mutz. I didn't mean that.
We're trying to get sponsored. I don't care about the product.
Hold on, Kyle. Hold on. I'm back. I just lapsed in consciousnness for a second. I don't remember anything I said. I think I said Motts. Yep, Motts is what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what that other thing was. Motts baby.
Motts baby. So yeah, I would agree with that. Remain open-minded. Remember that as we have to as human beings to negotiate the endless possibilities of the reality we agree on or don't agree on. We don't have all the answers and we don't really know. We just know what we think we know. And to convert that into a concrete reification of a really abstract belief, I think can have some benefits, but in a lot of cases, especially as it dictates your level of happiness, the kind of code that you follow in your life, and what people are worthy of value and judgment and which people aren't, it can definitely be a little bit, it's definitely worth examining. Mm-hmm. Engaging a little introspection, tracing your values back, what you really believe in, and seeing if that, the last thing I want to say is there's a great book by Sam Harris called The Moral Landscape. And I should have brought this up earlier because I could talk a lot about it, but in there, he argues that, what religions and of course, obviously he goes, he's a very big practitioner of Eastern and Buddhism and meditation, mindfulness. But in that book, he argues that, a lot of people will say, well, without religion, where do you get your values and where do you get your beliefs from? Why are you even a good person? Well, the first thing is that if it requires an X of anything to be a good person, you're probably not doing it for the right reasons. Yeah. And that's kind of scary as a human being to think that the only thing people that really keeps them in check is this sense of fear of stepping out of line instead of, this kind of more natural empathy and goodness and exchange. And the second thing is that he argues that when you look at the natural world and you look at religions, there is what he calls a universal code of wellness, making sure that as many people, and it's very, there's a philosophy, utilitarianism, but it's kind of borrows from that, is that the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people should be championed, and that should be, and it's not. It does. You don't need to have all these ancillary beliefs about everything. It's what's if you know how X makes you feel, you probably know how it makes a lot of other people feel in terms of being cold to someone, cutting them off, being rude to them, hurting them physically or emotionally, and because of that basic, assuming you're of sound mental health, assuming that holds true, there's no reason to not just follow the golden rule. So I mean, I went to say that earlier, but there's a great book that kind of dives into a universal morality that I think is really I should have talked about earlier, but shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah, we're deep in this episode. We need to cut it.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening as always, and we will actually see you earlier than next week because we have a bonus episode that is going to be in response. We got some questions from the audience. Thankfully, we got some emails from some audience members that had some questions about the last episode, and we are going to answer those in a shorter episode. So please check that out. We don't know what the title of it will be. It's going to be a monthly recap, and we're going to talk about some other things, why we chose these topics, what's going on in our lives separate from
we're
these
competing.
Dialogues.
We have a competition.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about our competition that Kyle and I have to the death. And we're going to talk about that and to some other things. And check that out. It'll be a lot shorter, hopefully.
We'll see. I don't know. See.
Maybe we're in a talkative, chatty Cathy mood today.
Yeah, I just had a gallon of coffee.
Oh, I'm surprised this episode was only an hour and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only reason it's ending is I got to go pee.
Okay. That's how it is.
Yep.
Things could not be otherwise. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next week or for the bonus episode. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.